Welcome to the Sauce Pod.
It has been a minute, you guys. I'm Taylor, your host of the Sauce Pod, and every week, except for these last few weeks, I put out a new episode wherever you stream your podcast, or you can catch the latest episode up on YouTube. Every week, I talk about everything for creators, influencers, social first brands, people who are building online and need to know how to make the biggest impact with the tools, resources, and trends at your disposal. We have a lot to catch up on today, from the rise of custom GPTs in OpenAI to, well, let's be honest, all the drama at OpenAI, which is now kind of behind us. We're going to talk about the latest overall in AI and tech updates, some platform updates, social marketing trends for 2024, some platform developments, the evolution of X. It's been a year since Elon Musk let that sink in. Real quick, though, before I start talking about the news, the updates, all the good stuff that's been happening, I want to call attention to this new series where I am interviewing creators, successful business owners, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, people who have been able to bootstrap their brand from the ground up and now have a story to tell about it. So we've released 2 of these episodes so far. I've already talked to Matt Wolf. He is the founder of Future Tools IO. He's also managed to grow a massive following on YouTube in less than a year. I talked to Rob Lennon a few weeks ago, and he is the mastermind behind dozens of info products, courses, all kinds of stuff. And he's really grown his following through X, amassed $500,000 in sales in less than a year, completely bootstrapped, no team, nothing. So he shares all of his good knowledge, some tips, some of his backstory. And next week, I have an episode coming out with the Heather Cooper. She's an amazing AI creator who's had a really organic, natural growth trajectory. And I think that's the most interesting thing about this is, in addition to all of the insights and stories that you can glean from creators who are doing this successfully, solopreneurs who are doing this well, and bootstrap founders who are literally pulling themselves up by the bootstraps and figuring out how to churn a revenue without a massive team, without tons of expensive tech. It's really cool to see how different creators kind of forge their path. So that is a series that is still part of the Sauce Pod. You can find the new episodes released wherever you stream the Sauce Pod already. So keep an eye on that. Last but not least, don't forget to find us on Substack, where we publish a really insightful deep dive rundown on what's going on every week for people who are building online. So you'll get social tips, you'll get trends, you might even get some secret sauce of just, business advice and entrepreneurial guidance. And then, of course, you get the AI tips and the tools and the updates. And naturally, we throw in some memes and some funny stuff from the internet, because what kind of newsletter would we be if we'd not expose you to the varied personalities of being extremely online? So check it out. There's also a premium paid subscriber tier if that's something that you're into and you want to help continue supporting the work of the Sauce for $7 a month. And you get lots of good stuff, including extra content every week, premium stuff. You get some freebies. So again, if that's something you're interested in, please check it out. You can find us online at The Sauce, FFS, like Food Fight Studios, .substack.com. It's also linked in the description here. All right, you guys, let's get into the news. So at some point over the last few weeks, OpenAI dropped a little something called GPTs, and it's the big thing that everyone is talking about on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Reddit. So if you're like, I don't even know what a GPT is, well, it stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And basically, it is a type of AI. If you're familiar with ChatGPT already, you can consider it like a custom version of ChatGPT that you can kind of train with instructions, extra knowledge, data sets that you upload, any combination of skills. And it's different from the quote unquote custom instructions feature that OpenAI launched a while back. If you're a Plus user in ChatGPT, you might know that the custom instructions are a little feature where you can apply universal instructions to all of your new chats. Here's an example. So let's say that you run a small business. Maybe it's like an insurance company, a local insurance company or something. And you would use your custom instructions in this case to identify all of the things about your business. So every new chat that you open will adhere back to those custom instructions, a totally separate thing from a GPT, which again are like their own little pre-trained chats that you can toggle between and start like infinite new conversations with. And it's all trained on a specific data set that you initially train it on. You can then share a link to these GPTs with anyone you made, and of course brings up a ton of different use cases. You can do creative campaign consistency and character design. You could repurpose content, think like common tasks and common content that you put out, emulate a voice or a style. So instead of having your entire ChatGPT instance trained on one custom instruction, you can now create like infinite little mini chatbots that are all separately trained on their own information. I recently wrote about my experience with GPTs on Twitter, X, and I also created one that anyone can use. I'll link it in the description of this as well. And it's basically for repurposing and summarizing your own newsletter content. So if you're like me, many of us have regular serialized content that we put out. In my case, it's my newsletter every week. And I take that and I run it through this custom GPT that I made. It's called the Sauce Curator. And it helps me use it in other places, helps me create additional snippets. It's also trained on my voice and style, so I can actually use it when I'm crafting the newsletter every Monday. I can basically just put, like full article texts of content that I'm looking into, because every week the way that it starts is I go down this rabbit hole of researching and curating headlines for people who have a very online presence with their brand. My goal is to find the information, updates, and the news that is most valuable to those people. So the way I do that is I spend hours every Monday researching all of this stuff that's happening on social platforms, in the AI space, in creator tools in general, and the indie hacker parts of the internet. And I take the most valuable stuff and then I put it into the newsletter. And the way that the Sauce Curator works is I can actually add all of the different elements that go into like the research and the content production phase of it. So everything that I curate, I can just take the raw text and get really concise, on-brand snippets in the style of my newsletter using this GPT. So it's been cool because prior to this, I've always just manually gone through and trained every single individual chat. Some of the other things that people have created GPTs for, one guy created a GPT where it's like you can type in a flow state. So if you've ever like typed really fast and then you spend a lot of time like going back and fixing up all of the errors and the grammar and changing things around, and then maybe you lose your train of thought. So he created a GPT where you can just like flow state type and then it automatically creates a new output with exactly what you've typed, but like reformatted so it's clean. So you can just continue typing and hit enter and then continue typing, not having to worry about, going back and like reformatting everything. Or if you wanted to, you could type it all in a separate document and then just take that whole document and import it into this GPT, which you can attach as a file. It's pretty cool. I've used that one a few times. So when it comes to storytelling, I think character building is also a massive use case. You can train the entire GPT on the character, the narrative, the writing style, the description. And as you continue, if you're a writer or you're a filmmaker, a creator on this kind of stuff, you can just continue iterating in that one chat or open a new chat every time you want to expand on this character development. You can take that same concept and translate it to knowledge bases, which is something that we're working on with the Sauce right now, taking all of our notes, knowledge, guides, and tutorials and training a custom GPT on it so that we can ultimately have a place where we can go back and reference all of the details of what's going on. But we can also share it with other people, with our clients and members and all of you, so that if you want to know what we know, you can do that with a GPT. I do want to talk about some of the things I like about them and then some of the things that I don't like, because while they have a lot of promise right now, I think GPTs still have quite a ways to go. Obviously, lots of use cases, tons of big tasks that are now easier to accomplish and share. There's also probably some creator monetization opportunities for developers of custom GPTs later down the line. But I want to touch on some of the things that I think still need some work, because there is still a bit of a ways to go for these to be really good. There's these general sort of like vector-based methods that are used to create a GPT that aren't always effective, especially when it comes to complex queries involving like multiple files and various data sets. And then there's this issue of actions, which lets you add data schema, but it's still pretty limited on what you can do. Also, GPTs in their current state right now are known to kind of reveal sources of information, which can definitely be a problem if your data that you trained it on is under wraps or proprietary. You can actually coax a GPT into telling you what its custom instructions are. I've tried it with a few of my friends' GPTs. There are instructions that you can train it on to ensure that it doesn't leak any information, but there's still ways that people have been able to get around that. So it's also safe to assume that anything that you're uploading to train a GPT and all subsequent user actions from that GPT are being used in some way, shape, or form in OpenAI's model training data. So take that as you will. If you're working with sensitive data, maybe just be careful about that. I linked in the newsletter a good thread of different GPTs that you can try. There's a lot of curated lists already popping up on Twitter and on LinkedIn, so check that out. Let's move on to some of the AI and tech updates. The big elephant in the room that's been the topic of everyone's headlines these last few weeks, of course, has been the OpenAI drama. And I'm not going to go too deep into it, because if you're listening to this, there's a good chance that you probably have already heard about the big shakeup that happened with OpenAI a couple weeks ago, where Sam Altman, the CEO of the company and founder, was ousted by his own board. And that happened on a Friday. The entire internet was on fire all weekend trying to piece together what the hell happened. Why did Sam get fired from OpenAI? And to make a long story short, Sam Altman is back at OpenAI, back as CEO. But following that whole shakeup, a lot of pieces fell apart. A big driver was AI safety, especially AI safety at scale, as OpenAI continues to push the boundaries of artificial general intelligence. So balancing safety with the benefit for all humanity is a big concern. And we can only surmise that that probably had something to do with this rift between the board and Sam Altman. But basically, 3 days after he was fired from OpenAI, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella announced that Sam Altman would be joining Microsoft to lead a new advanced AI research team. And then 2 days after that, OpenAI announced that Altman was returning as CEO and that its board had been reconstituted. There are many alignment efforts underway with OpenAI right now, but that's kind of the gist of it. A big shakeup that probably could have been avoided, but created a content tsunami online. And I wrote about it in a recent edition of the Sauce newsletter. The whole shakeup's kind of created this singular collective mania in between the San Francisco tech scene online, through media, and this space where social and the internet converge. So I think it's safe to say that social media has amplified and is in many ways kind of steered this narrative of what happened. The thing I find most interesting is the broader context of how this all became such a public spectacle, how we now live in a reality where business leaders of Sam's scale aren't just technical visionaries, but they're also royal subjects of the internet, where corporate decisions are actually kind of public ones. The closest thing for me that comes to mind when I try to compare this unprecedented social feeding frenzy to a modern historical benchmark is probably Elon Musk. Because as we know, Musk is a man of the internet. Musk tweets things like wanting to buy Twitter, for example. And sometimes he follows through, part driven by social proof and a big part driven by legal obligation because he gets himself into hot water. But with the Sam Altman OpenAI situation, I don't think that it would have happened the way it did if it weren't for Sam's tech celebrity status and kind of the extremely online culture that feeds into the AI wave, both on platforms like X, as well as in open source spaces for AI and machine learning. I think the parasocial context here is really important. People have this relationship, if even one-sided, with Sam Altman. It's the same sort of social demagogue status that you see in, again, examples like Elon Musk. And prior to social media, you see it with founders like Steve Jobs. A lot of people have compared Sam to Steve, by the way. That's kind of just how the public perception is set up at this point. Overall, though, there was a lot of back and forth with the key players that were part of this whole frenzy. They were very transparent and open about communicating with the public and those who were speculating. Of course, right after it happened, Sam Altman, he had his own tweets. All in all, I think this has just created a powerful narrative that involves OpenAI employees, industry leaders, tech enthusiasts, and then, of course, the internet, the casual observers who just can't help but feel compelled by the speculation. And it's definitely evident when you look at sort of the orchestrated social efforts on X that OpenAI had with some of its employees, where Sam was tweeting out and retweeting hearts and mentioned something like OpenAI is nothing without its people, and the big petition of, I think it was over 90% of employees threatening to walk out if Sam isn't reinstated. That was just further amplified on social media, especially seeing how heavily the ally lines were drawn. There's no denying that the dynamics on platforms like X and this weird kind of convergence of opinion that we see were really instrumental in shaping this perception, which, of course, in some ways influenced the outcome in Sam's favor. He's back in the saddle as CEO. Among other things, it comes down to a strategic leveraging of digital channels. Whether that's intentional or not, that's what happened. So that's the quick rundown. Definitely something to think about as we see more and more rapid advancement and changes happening in the tech and AI and tool space that we're so familiar with because we use it and it makes our life easier. But there is a social status tied to these companies in some regards. I'll keep you guys updated on if there's any more big updates. For now, there's been thousands of news headlines and articles written about it. I'm sure you can find lots of stuff, including the quick rundown I put together in the sauce a couple weeks ago. So check that one out. On to other tech updates and tool changes to know about. One interesting one is Humane has officially revealed their AI pin. It'll only cost you a cool $699, and orders opened last week in November, so you can go get yours if you want. It's basically coined as the first AI wearable with a screenless little gadget. You pin it to your clothes. It's equipped with a high-speed processor. It's powered by OpenAI models, and you can talk to it using natural language. You can use the intuitive touchpad. You can hold up objects to it so that it can see. You can use gestures, interact with the laser ink display projected onto your hand. So it's gotten some heat. I think it's the first of many wearables we'll see that are AI enabled. I'm curious to see how it'll continue to perform in the market and what the public perception of it is. It's one of the early prototypes I think that we've seen at this scale. So just an interesting tidbit. Figma has a big update. Figma, if you're familiar with it, if you're a UX or a UI designers, and really anyone doing creative work, this is a big one. Figma just added a suite of AI features to its FigJam whiteboarding tool. So you can create templates for design, planning frameworks. For me, it's like nothing is worse than coming out of a deep working session and then realizing that all you got done was like the flowchart outline or the like project framework. So if you're using FigJam already, this kind of new AI suite will just supercharge those efforts and hopefully reduce some of the prep time needed to build collaborative whiteboards. So you can spend time actually creating and strategizing rather than just trying to figure out which buttons do which so that you can create a bounding box for a note. I'm really excited about this. I use Figma very regularly. So since this has dropped, I've been playing around with it and really find it to be helpful to just simply describe what it is you're trying to create on your whiteboard, and then it does it, whether that's a Gantt chart for tasks that you have coming up, whether it's a weekly meeting outline, any sort of collaborative whiteboarding workspace stuff you can do with FigJam. And now with all these AI features in it too. A couple other AI updates. Last week, my friend Javi Lopez launched a tool called Magnific AI. And in a matter of days, the waitlist collected thousands of names on it. Everyone is itching to kind of get in because it's really, really good. This tool is an upscaler, so it will transform any image into a higher resolution version, adding as much detail or as little detail as you prefer. It's now available for everyone, so I linked the sign up in last week's newsletter. Check that out, Magnific AI. I also have a really good thread of what people have been doing with it, upscaling everything from portraits, restoring old photographs, food shots, product shots, real estate and landscapes. It's really beautiful, the level of details, and it's a little bit different from other upscaling tools in that you have more control over things like texture and diffusion, like skin textures and plants and lighting and food. It's cool. Remix AI is another thing I've been using lately, and I love it. I wouldn't even call it a tool. Basically like a social app, but for AI, for visual AI. So think of like a full screen vertical TikTok scroll or like Reels, but it's all AI generated images from other users. And then you can remix the existing prompt that they use directly in the app, or you can upload something that you already have from like Midjourney or DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, wherever you generate your images. The cool thing is this remixing concept where you take other people's prompts, you can iterate on creative ideas, change some words around, add your own stuff to it, and then it outputs the image and then you post that to your profile. Still early stages, but it's definitely getting up there. Check out Remix. Hopefully you get a little creative inspiration. It's always nice to break up the doom scrolling with another app, right? Moving on, Stability AI last week dropped Stable Video Diffusion. It's Stable's first foray into image to video generative models, and it's based on Stable Diffusion. Obviously, people are using it for hilarious things like memes, but the use cases for content are kind of everywhere. Branded B-roll for your business, social clips, stock video, etc. You can find the code to install it up on GitHub. The specs to run the model locally are on Hugging Face. So if you do give it a try, let us know. Stable Diffusion's video diffusion is now adding to the ranks of other video models such as Pico Labs, Genmo, Runway, and more. Let's talk about some of the social updates. If you're a content creator or an online person making content with the intent of growing, these updates are for you. Over on YouTube has rolled out a new For You feed. It's kind of like TikTok. YouTube has created this feed that gives you a more personalized scrolling experience. And it's should be rolling out this month, if not already. Every YouTube creator channel now gets this like personalized auto playlist, which curates a mix based on their watch histories. So creators here are kind of in control where they can toggle this feature on or off. You can tailor it to showcase things like shorts, live streams, full videos, whatever. The TikTok experience is finally here, you guys. It's finally on YouTube, and if there was ever a time to lean into short form vertical video, it is now. I will talk about that more in a minute when we do the social trends rundown. But that's what you need to know about YouTube's For You feed. In other news, TikTok ads are at peak exposure. Business Insider a couple weeks ago gave some of its journalists the task of scrolling 500 TikTok videos to determine basically how often ads are showing up in between content on the app. Both of the journalists who took on this challenge reported that about 30% of the content they experienced was ads. For perspective, broadcast TV is about 28% ads. So again, TikTok is a viable advertising channel right now. And the answer is pretty obvious if you're ever wondering, like, is it worth exploring TikTok for ads? Because even with the saturation right now, advertisers are still seeing their cost per acquisition, the CPAs, are shrinking on TikTok. So I think TikTok's now where Facebook was in like 2015, 2016, getting into the height of its ad business. On the user side, yes, ads are annoying as hell. TikTok has been testing an ad-free tier for $5 a month. So if you really just can't deal with the ads anymore, that is the business model for you. TikTok is also following on the heels of Twitter doing this, Instagram doing this, as the entire platform, the social platform economy, slowly but surely shifts into subscription-based models for access. So we're seeing that more and more, but until that full adoption takes place, expect to see ads. Also, TikTok now has these prompt cards that you can use for content ideas. It's basically like a creative card that's similar to Cards Against Humanity or one of those. It's like a full screen vertical card. And the idea is to give a simple data-backed prompt to help kind of brainstorm content ideas. There are 5 different categories, including trends, edutainment, storytelling, creator tools, and community, because TikTok really wants to make creating content on its platform as efficient, seamless, and streamlined as possible. So they're coming and serving up all of the tricks for creators so that you don't have to think too hard and you can just go right in and start creating. So if you're ever really at a creative block, check these things out. On the Instagram front, you can now download your reels. So screen recording your reels to share them on other platforms or even with your little group chat is no longer a thing you'll have to do because you can download it directly from Instagram. This only works for publicly posted reels, but all publicly posted reels will now be downloadable by default. You can switch this off in settings if you want, like if you don't want people downloading your content. But for reels downloaded from Instagram, just expect that you're going to get that like little icon watermark in one of the corners. Just something to keep in mind. But finally, people have been asking for this forever. I'm glad that Adam Mosseri, Instagram CEO, is listening and is giving people the ability to download reels. Whether you are a creator or just a consumer of content, this is a handy little update. Okay, guys, we are going to start talking about X now. There's a lot to get through here, like a lot, but I'm going to try to power through it as best I can and try to keep it clean and simple for you. Starting with Elon wanting to get more gamers on X. He's taking a very Twitch-like approach to get there. Basically, a couple weeks ago, they announced that you can now stream your live chat on the same screen as the playback in the desktop version of the app. Basically, if you are a gamer or a live streamer and you value having the conversations, the chat directly there, this is now an option for you on X where you can view your live stream chat on the same screen as the playback in the desktop version. In other news, does anyone actually know what's happening inside of X? Because I don't. I'm sure you don't, and I'm sure that most journalists don't either, other than what they're speculating on or what they get from like leaked documents, whistleblowers and all that. Everything we're getting comes straight from the horse's mouth at this point, either from Elon Musk, one of his affiliate brand X accounts, or from the one and only Linda Yaccarino. Nobody outside of X really knows what's going on inside of the platform. Anyone who's claiming that X is failing or succeeding, it's all just based on fairly limited estimations and speculation. Only X really knows what's happening in there with its numbers, with its revenue. X claims that it's earning more money from subscriptions and selling data now instead of just ads. It's hard to tell because we know that ad revenue has been slashed drastically as more and more advertisers have been pulling out of Twitter. In a recent interview, he literally told advertisers to go fuck themselves. because that's just not the business model he's working towards. That was fun. The company says web visits are up, but since most users are on mobile, these numbers might not even mean anything for the big picture. And then in its EU disclosures in Europe, X revealed that it is significantly fewer moderators compared to TikTok and Meta, which naturally begs the question of how is user safety handled? How is data handled? How is content moderation handled? The staff to user ratio is definitely a concern. But if we're only considering logged in users, which again, we don't even know what that number is anymore because X isn't a publicly traded company anymore, it might not be as big of a deal as it sounds. Interesting nonetheless. Some other things X has been up to. Post headlines are finally back, you guys. I haven't seen them yet. They should be rolling in this week or next week. Back in October, Elon Musk made the decision to remove headlines on link posts because apparently link previews are just not his aesthetic. So he removed the headlines from link previews so that all you see is the image. And then you click on the image and that takes you to the website. Really confusing if you don't know what the hell the link is that you're clicking. Also potentially dangerous because you don't know the link that you're clicking. We're really glad to see headlines are coming back. I'm sure that it's probably caused some issues and some complaints. Also, yes, in case you're still wondering, X is still very much struggling with revenue. Advertisers have just been pulling out in droves. Again, this is like the 5th or 6th wave that this has happened over offensive content, Elon Musk saying stupid things. Advertisers are like, they're done with it. They're slamming the brakes on revenue. It's right before the holiday season. So the takeaway here is I think that you can expect more pay-to-play features like premium and now premium plus tiers to make up for lost revenue. And Elon Musk made his stance really clear when he took the stage at the DealBook conference on Wednesday. He had lots of jokes. He had lots of his very stark, very Muskian personality on full display. But, you know, the conversation quickly turned more serious when the subject of Musk's recent anti-Semitic posts on X came up, whether his company can actually survive the advertiser boycott. And Musk said it straight himself. He was unapologetic and defiant, acknowledging his mistakes, but then doing everything in his power to push advertisers away. And even said to the interviewer, Andrew Ross Sorkin, I hope they stop. Don't advertise. If somebody is going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go fuck yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. That's what he said. He also singled out Disney's CEO, Bob Iger, who discussed not wanting Disney to be like affiliated with Musk while on stage. And Musk, in his cheeky ways, was like, hey, Bob, hope you're in the audience. So I think it's pretty clear that Musk is pretty resigned to the possibility that advertisers are the enemy. And whether by his own actions or not, I think that he is set on shifting the revenue model for X. And many other platforms have started to follow suit. We just talked about this with TikTok now charging users for an ad-free experience. Instagram recently rolling out a premium tier. Twitter has 2 premium tiers now, one for $16 a month, and that includes an entirely ad-free experience in addition to access to features like Grok. Overall, the whole interview was really weird, very meandering, kind of devolved into just this like stream of consciousness from Musk, who actually spoke like 3 times longer than any of the other interviewees did. But the questions around, you know, Musk's own actions and the resulting massive advertiser exodus that's happening, the things that could impact X seem to garner the most nonchalant answers from him. He just doesn't seem to care, as evidenced. But here we are, still on Twitter, still waiting for the other foot to drop. And if you're interested in reading a whole big list of everything X has done since Musk has took over, I've linked it for you. I'm actually going to put it in the description because I think it's that good. It's a full laundry list of all the major changes over the last year, from the full rebrand to premium subscriptions, the name change from Twitter to X, the advertiser drama, the AI investment, and more. It's all in this massive list. This has been the business story of all business stories, at least over the last year. Possibly the OpenAI drama might be able to come close, but Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter and then his subsequent efforts to marginally run the platform into the ground, it's an extremely hardcore Twitter. Remember that? Hardcore Twitter? And not only do we write about it, but a ton of other incredible platforms and outlets have been sinking their teeth into this story since the day that Musk took over in 2022. Zoe Schiffer, who writes for Platformer with Casey Newton, just recently released for pre-order her book about Musk's takeover of Twitter. It's called Extremely Hardcore, comes out on February 27th, and it basically tells the story of more than a year of reporting on possibly what is just the wildest corporate takeover in the history of Silicon Valley. So I can't wait to read it. Feel free to pick up a copy. This is not sponsored. This is just more evidence that the wild ride we're experiencing from Elon Musk and Twitter is so far from over. But I have to say, I am optimistic about what the future holds. And I hope that by shifting the business model and by prioritizing creators and using things like community notes to validate content, I think that there's something to that. It's just going to be a matter of whether or not Musk is able to lead the platform there. Other updates in the latest. Lots of memes, you guys, lots of memes. Make sure that you check those out because those sauce snippets at the end of each newsletter are my pride and joy. Last but not least, before we wrap on this episode, I want to give you a quick rundown of what I think social media is going to look like next year. If you're like me, like many of us, we're thinking about what our content's going to look like for the next few months. We're thinking about how to leverage all of the tools and technology available to us. And we're also thinking about the easiest and most frictionless place to grow. So I put together a list of thoughts of what I think winning in 2024 will look like. I think it means paying closer attention to strategies like really focusing on mobile-first video, especially for the algorithm rather than just your core following alone. Pay attention to what the algorithm is encouraging and spotlighting and see how you can fit your content and approach into algorithm-focused tactics. Another point is leaning into formats like short-form vertical video, stories, AI-enabled features. If it's new and you have access to it on the apps that you are already posting on, give it a shot and test it. Oftentimes, these platforms will boost content that makes use of new features so that it can be exposed to more people. That's not always a surefire way to get reach, but it definitely can help in certain situations. My third point on stuff to pay attention to is community relationships. Building relationships isn't going anywhere, but building community relationships now is going to just continue becoming more and more niche, more personalized, more intimate, more exclusive. So things like messaging or interactive features, small group experiences, like Discord plus Instagram. You look at these broadcast channels that many Instagram accounts already have, and it feels like a Telegram style channel in your DMs. That's going to continue happening. So make use of those community-driven features on these platforms. X has several. LinkedIn has groups and private pages. My fourth point is capitalizing on the creator economy boom because more and more platforms are going to continue offering direct monetization opportunities, especially as we gear away from advertising revenue models. We talked about that earlier. With more things becoming subscription-based, you better bet that creators want a slice of that pie. And the platforms, if they're smart about it, will oblige and give more direct monetization opportunities. Overall, the biggest piece of advice I can give when it comes to planning content for next year is just to be flexible, expect the unexpected because things are going to shift and change. And look at how fast technology has moved just over the last year. Regulation and platform changes are probably going to disrupt strategies. The competition alone for audience attention is at an all-time high. As a creator or as an online builder, social first brand, your differentiator will be, staying adaptable and testing fast and doubling down on the things that work. Be open-minded with your content approach. big picture, I listed out like 8 trends. You can find it in my last post, but expect a lot of industry regulatory changes, right? We're going to see more of this as AI regulation cracks down and there's more publishing practices on how we use AI content and what it can be used for marketing, advertising. I think we're also going to see more use of live video and video streaming across platforms. We already talked about X and what Elon is doing to try to get gamers to stream. That's only going to continue pushing the boundary further into next year. Social commerce is happening more and more in the DMs, especially on Instagram, on TikTok. Product-based offerings directly on the platform will continue being a thing. And again, that's where this idea of like your small communities can totally take advantage of social commerce activations. I think there's going to be more of a mainstream adoption of VR, AR, the metaverse, obviously more expansion in generative AI for both content creation and discovery, integrating generative AI into discovery algorithms. I think there's going to be more heightened data privacy and transparency concerns about what's happening with all of our data and content. Who owns what, really? While I think that there's going to be a big opportunity for direct creator monetization, there's also going to be a weird gray area where competition and alternative platforms like Threads have blurred lines about what monetization means for the platform. So definitely something we're going to be keeping a close eye on. You know, we love to give you the monetization scoop, so that'll come. And then for X, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, you know, all of these like short form micro content writing platforms, I predict that there's going to be a bigger focus on like news and journalistic content. Somebody recently referred to it as the new broadcast media. And if you think about it, there's a lot of credibility to that. So that is a wrap for this week's episode of the Sauce Pod. Thanks so much for tuning in with me through all of these updates. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. At the very least, I hope that you find me on Substack and check out some of the great writings that me and the team are putting together every week. Lots of stuff to sink your teeth into and even more to come. Don't forget, next week, we're dropping a new episode with the Heather Cooper. Make sure to tune into the Sauce Pod. That's where all of these conversations with creators who are building, launching, and doing amazing stuff are all happening here with the Sauce.
Hey guys, that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Sauce Pod. Hope you enjoyed yourself, maybe even learned a thing or two. Don't forget, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. You can also subscribe to our newsletter that goes out every Monday night. All of the latest and greatest tips, news, and trends for content creators and digital entrepreneurs. Until next time, stay saucy.